this episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. As always, myself, Eli, joined by Isaac and Joe. Fellas, before we get into the debacle that is the Chicago Bears organization right now, let's just touch uh, pretty briefly on what we thought of this Arizona Cardinals game. A 29-9 rout of the Chicago Bears in favor of the Cardinals. The Bears are on a 2-game losing streak now. Joe, I'll toss it to you first. Your thoughts on this loss to Arizona?
Very ugly. Uh, I hate to say this because you don't want to blame players, but it just looks like no one was inspired to play on Sunday. Defense, they got gashed in the run game, which they've been getting gashed all year. But this week was terrible. They let up another 53-yard touch. They let up another big touchdown at the end of the first half. So now, well, it didn't happen again in the fourth quarter, but at that point, it was at the end of 2 halves in a row, they've let up 50-plus yard touchdown, which is not good. Um, and then the offense did not play well at all again. Uh, the no one was getting open somehow not against the young corners that we talked about on Thursday. I don't get how that's possible. Keenan Allen was dropping balls. Uh, Roman Udze dropped the ball. It just was not good on offense. They didn't run the ball at all for some reason. I don't know why. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I think when they were running the ball, DeAndre Swift was gaining 2 to 4 yards a carry, which is what he's been doing all season. But last week he was doing that, and they still ran the ball, and he ended up breaking up off a 56-yard rushing touchdown. Why not take that chance again? We're not doing great through the air. Do something on the ground, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. But Caleb wasn't hitting checkdowns, uh, which isn't good, and that's on him and coaching. Like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But yeah, overall, embarrassing way to lose that game to a team that they were 4-4 and had a winning or had an even record. But on paper, they're not a very good team. They have a decent offense, a terrible defense. You can't do anything against a terrible defense, and then you let their average offense look like world beaters in the running game against you. So Kyler Murray didn't even have to do anything passing the ball, really. So yeah, embarrassing. I was sick to my stomach watching that game. I don't know. There's nothing really much else for me to say about instant reactions. But Isaac, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the execution was horrible. It seems like this team forgot how to play coming out of the bye. And to make the Cardinals defensive line look like they were one of the best defensive lines in football, when in reality they were a really struggling unit, it was pretty, baffling to me because, there's got to be a discussion that we'll probably talk about later, in regards to Ryan Poles is he fit to stay as the Bears GM, past this season? Because the two things that he messed up on badly were sticking with Matt Eberflus and the construction of the offensive line, because you can't develop a rookie quarterback. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You can't develop him if you don't have a inadequate offensive line. And it's been painfully obvious this season. It was painfully obvious last season. Nothing was addressed, and pisses me off because I don't want another quarterback to not be developed properly. And we're kind of starting to see it with Caleb. I don't know if it's a coaching thing, if it's an internal thing with him, but he hasn't been hitting the checkdowns. He's been trying to play hero ball too often. He's been inaccurate, throwing deep, and I don't know. It just seems like this Bears team has essentially given up because it must be all these comments that Eberflus has been making, that it just doesn't align with what the team is going through right now. This guy's saying, we have each other and stuff like that. We have to execute, and it's on the players' execution, stuff like that. But it's really on mostly on the coaching. But I don't know if the coaching has a effect on the players. I feel like it does because I've been noticing on offense with Keenan Allen, he's been dropping uh, um, a lot of balls for a guy that's been a really reliable target in the NFL. Um, and it just seems like this team doesn't know how to play. I don't even know what I'm watching. I honestly don't know what I was watching on Sunday because it was it was really disappointing, and we could get into all the specifics of the game and what happened, but there's got to be change, and we're gonna get into this in a little bit, but can we even trust the Bears organization to make that change? Can we trust the Bears organization to hire the right head coach? Because it's an endless cycle of mediocrity, and right now it's painfully obvious that the Bears don't have an identity. They don't have an identity on offense. The identity they did have on defense, they lost it. They lost it last week. They lost it this week. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it back. And it's coming at the worst time because we're coming into that stretch of the schedule where we're just going to be playing the NFC North like pretty much every other week, if not every week. And I don't know, it's hard to be optimistic and think about what's going to happen to this team this season. We'll get into the stuff later and in regards to the offseason, but it's just really disappointing. And quite frankly, I'm pissed off right now. And toss it over to you, Eli, and your thoughts on this game and the Bears overall.
Yeah, so I like the fact that you brought up identity because, throughout this entire season, for the most part, this defense has been the unit that has had an identity. It's hard hitting, it's takeaways, it's interceptions, it's everything. Third down, red zone defense, that kind of thing. It's been there. And obviously, yesterday, that was not the case. So now the Bears officially have no identity, as you kind of mentioned. There's nothing, there's not a unit right now. And I know maybe we're overreacting because we are a banged up unit right now, and it's been a 2-game skid. But as of right now, the Bears don't have an identity, and that's on every aspect. And even the offense for a few weeks had that identity. It was run the ball and get Caleb into a rhythm so he can make those short to intermediate throws to dial up the deep passes that he had been improving on, but it's still a major work in progress. And as you kind of mentioned, we'll get into the whole organizational failure and what's to come in the coming weeks and into the offseason. But I kind of want to narrow things down to Caleb. Joe, unless you had something else to mention
Sorry.
first.
Yeah. I do want to give two defenders props real quick. Brady Stewart, first game, he's still making plays. That's great to see. And then there was someone else I wanted to mention. I forgot, but there was someone else that did have a good play, but most of the defenders didn't. Oh, Charles Smith almost had a pick on the opening drive, a one-handed pick. So those two guys definitely came to play. The rest of the team on defense did not.
No, yeah, and it's sad that there is so much negativity, but it's deserved 100%. Like the Bears are not in a good spot right now, but there were a few bright spots yesterday. So I do like that you mentioned that because Reddy Stewart was the preseason hero, and we were also happy that he made the roster, and it was cool to see him out there. And I've always been a fan of Terrell Smith, so for him to come out on the opening play and just boom right there, make a play and get the Bears into what we thought would have been a good position to go into the offense there. But yeah, there were a few good bright spots there for the Bears yesterday. But speaking specifically about Caleb Williams, I know we kind of talked beforehand. The last few weeks kind of looked similar to what we saw through the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season, to where he looked like a rookie and he was missing the easy stuff. He was passing up on the easy stuff, and whether that's his fault particularly, or if it's Shane Waldron, or if it's Matt Eberflus or the offensive line, I don't think there is one particular place to put blame, but you also can't absolve Caleb Williams of all of this blame. So I'll start with you, Isaac, if you have any thoughts specifically when it comes to this offense, and maybe in particular with Caleb Williams. Where do you think the blame mostly lies? And what, if anything, do you contribute to Caleb Williams when this Bears offense is stalled? And is there anything glaring in his game right now that you think he needs to improve on?
Yeah, when you're asking about anything glaring that he needs to improve on, it's not only the deep ball accuracy, but just to have the confidence in yourself. And I've started to notice this where Caleb has been trying to do a little too much which is good. I like that he's trying to extend plays and stuff like that, but it comes to a point where you need to really look at yourself in the mirror or take a deep, you know, like conversation with yourself, whatever you have to do, and be like, is this worth it? Trying to extend plays like this because, Caleb can end up getting seriously hurt. And for a guy that I expect to play 15 and 20 years in the NFL, I don't think that this type of extending the play kind of thing from Caleb should continue on because we saw this at the very end of the game where for some reason he was still in the game and he ended up getting hurt. I don't know the severity of it yet, but it's stuff like this where it concerns me because yeah, I have a lot of faith in Caleb, and I do think most of the blame is on the coaching staff right now, and the fact that Caleb doesn't have a really, a good offensive line at all is contributing to a lot of his mishaps so far. But it just concerns me because I don't want Caleb to be someone that ends up being, a little bit injury prone or something like that. And he's got to really work on sometimes you just got to throw the check down. It's really easy. It's supposed to be quarterback friendly. It's supposed to make you, a little comfortable. Like, okay, if this doesn't work out, like if I don't get to my if the third read, second read doesn't work, I'm just gonna pass it off to my running back. We signed DeAndre Swift to a 3-year, $24 million contract. He's a really good running back. I mean, we've seen this where Swift has had some electric plays this season. He's not a Saquon Barkley, but he is a electrifying running back that we can use more often. Just give the check down to Swift. Make it easier for yourself, make it easier for the team because we're the game against the Cardinals, there was a lot of situations where it was a third and long, a second and long, and that's not going to help for your development, and it's not going to help for the team overall. So that's just a little bit of my thoughts on Caleb Williams. What about you, Joe?
Um, yeah, I'll go. So yeah, I as fans, we all obviously not obviously, but we blame coaching when stuff is going wrong, which is understandable. It makes sense. You don't really want to blame the players because they have talent, so you blame the coaches. That's not always the correct thing to do. Sometimes it is on the players for executing. But at this point, I think some of it, the blame is on Caleb Williams for sure. But I would like to point the finger at as much as I can at the quarterbacks coach and Shane Waldron because those two guys definitely have the biggest impact on Caleb. Uh, the Bears quarterback coach Kerry Joseph. It I don't know if he's teaching it or what, or I don't know what the reads are on these plays. But if the reads aren't, it well, I think the checkdowns are always the last thing. But like they aren't drilling in. If no one is there, hit your check down. Please hit the check down. Don't scramble, try to make a play, and then get get sacked, get hit, whatever. If they aren't drilling in, hit your check down, then they're not doing their job correctly. Now, I want to believe they are because I don't think any coach wants their players to get hit, and anyone wants a negative play. I know Eberflus for sure doesn't want a negative play because he last year and this year drilled into Justin Fields' head for sure, and might be drilling into Caleb Williams' head to not turn the ball over and not take risky plays. Caleb has done a few risky plays, but he's also a rookie, so that's fine. But well, it's not fine, but it'll get better over time. Justin, it was his third year and whatever, and we're not gonna get into that, but yeah. Um, but I do think it's a little bit on. I think yeah, like I said, I think it's a little bit on the quarterbacks coach. And then Shane Waldron. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I understand football scheme or anything. I listen to people and they say sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. I watch videos and yeah, that's what they say. Sometimes it's fine, other times they don't know what he's doing. It sounds a lot like Getsy last year, although everyone last year agreed that they didn't understand at all what Getsy was doing. So it's a little bit different, but sometimes Waldron calls good plays that the guy just can't get open, and that's not on the coaching. That's on the players for sure. Um, and that doesn't help Caleb not get completions because, or sorry, that doesn't help Caleb get completions because if your guys aren't getting open, you have nowhere to throw the ball to. And he in college, I think, had this mindset where he can make any play, no matter how well covered the receivers were. He would get them uncovered by scrambling. In the NFL, that doesn't work. You gotta get rid of the ball. Have that 3 second clock. One 1,000, two 1,000, three 1,000. If no one's there, throw the ball away. Or if no one's there, try to see if your check down's open. Hit that. One of those two things. But yeah, I think it really is on Kerry Joseph and Shane Waldron. But I mean, there also is the possibility that it is Caleb wanting to make a play because he thinks he can make any play still. Sorry, if I had to get percentages, probably go 25 Caleb. This isn't going to add up to 100, but 25 Caleb, then 50-50 between the coaches.
Yeah, and I do agree with a lot of that. I think it boils down to, what is Shane Waldron presenting Caleb with to run the offense? Does it fit what the defense is showing him? And is it Caleb that is checking out of plays based on what he sees at the line of scrimmage? Or is it is he making the right decision when it comes to that? And we don't really have the answer to that yet. And again, I won't claim to be a film expert either, so I don't know necessarily what that looks like. And if he's making those right audibles at the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. But is Shane Waldron doing enough to put Caleb in those favorable positions? And is the play calling, does Shane Waldron come in with a plan every week based on what he saw from his opponent in the previous weeks? And does that change throughout the matchup for Shane Waldron? Does he adapt to what the defense is showing him on a week-by-week basis? Or is he running an offense based on what he's seen in the last few weeks? And again, I don't have the answer to that question, but it is interesting to kind of think about, does Shane Waldron have that adaptability factor? Or is it Caleb kind of superseding that and thinking that what he sees at the line of scrimmage is better than what was called by Shane Waldron? And is it a matter of, is Shane Waldron, do his offensive play calling, does it make sense based on what the defense is showing him? Do the route concepts make sense? Because that's been a topic this week as well, that Keenan Allen, he is that short yardage guy. You can hit him on the 5 to 10 yard passes to pick up crucial third down moments and stuff like that. And he is being sent out on these deep balls and these route concepts that you could argue Rome Odunze should be running. I think that's something that, I just don't think they're taking into consideration the type of player that Keenan Allen is at this point in his career. I think they're expecting too much of him. And this sounds like I'm putting a lot of blame on Shane Waldron rather than Caleb Williams, but as you kind of mentioned, I think it's equal blame around. I think we're all in agreement that Caleb Williams' talent is there and he has the intangibles and he knows how to read a defense and things like that. Right now, I think it's just a matter of everyone obviously not being on the same page, and you can't really pinpoint what the actual problem is right now. It's just there's no cohesion when it comes to the offense, let alone any unit right now, with Caleb Williams and with this offense. So, if it were me, I would, right at this point, when your offensive line is as banged up as it has been in the last few weeks, and the Cardinals were getting home with 3-man pressure. That's horrible. A 5-on-3 and you're losing early and often, that just cannot happen. So you have to make changes throughout games to kind of put him in a more favorable position, move the pocket, run the bootleg, play action, make the defense afraid of DeAndre Swift, because that's what this offense has been in the last few weeks. You have to respect the rushing and catching ability of DeAndre Swift. So, run the quarterback option out of that, because we've seen in weeks prior that Caleb Williams is dangerous with his feet. And right now, he cannot be that statuesque quarterback to sit in the pocket and deliver downfield because he just doesn't have the time. And they've got to do something to put him in a more favorable position. So, Isaac, did you already do thoughts on Caleb Williams? I can't remember if I tossed it to you or not. Okay, so you did. Um, so, Joe, do you have any more thoughts on Caleb Williams?
Not exactly Caleb Williams, but I do want to know, because you brought up using DeAndre Swift. Do you guys prefer them using shotgun, or would you like to see them go under center and hand the ball off and play action that way more? Like I know that we all aren't super big film guys, but I mean, RPOs have been taken over the league in the past like 10 years, 5 years mainly, mostly. But that's the way the Bears are doing it, is they're going from shotgun, doing an RPO. Um, but I still think there's credence to using the under center play action game, which the Bears under Shane Waldron don't seem to want to do, which I don't understand. Plus, I think the Bears, when they're running from under center this year, have done better at that than running from shotgun. But I don't know. That's just what I think about you guys.
Yeah, from everything I've heard, it seems like running backs, again, just from what I've heard, and again, I'm not going to pretend to know every concept of football and stuff like that, but from what I have heard, running backs prefer quarterbacks being under center because it seems like they have more speed to gather when they take that handoff. So yeah, I would definitely prefer Caleb being under center, but that goes back to whether or not they have confidence in Coleman Shelton to hold the block long enough. Because with Caleb back close to the line of scrimmage, I don't know if they have the confidence in the center to make that happen or not. But again, I'm not going to pretend to know the concepts and stuff like that. But that might be something that they need to consider. But Isaac, do you have any thoughts on under center or shotgun, or if they want him in the pistol or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. It might be a trust thing with Coleman Shelton, but I would for one definitely be willing to, try that out because it seems to me when I watch around the league that the under the center play action is very efficient and it would help Caleb a lot in my opinion. But not just that, also to design plays to get him rolling out of the pocket on purpose, like to have him actually designed for him to go out and for the receivers to follow with him because I was noticing yesterday or on Sunday's game a lot of the time Caleb would be, in shotgun, he would hike the ball, the offensive line would collapse, the pressure would get to him. He'll run out and he'll be able to escape, but the routes aren't designed for that to happen. So the guys, are not really in position and Caleb's just left looking and like there's nothing open, And so I would like to see more design plays like that and more under center, whatever it needs to take to get Caleb comfortable and the offense to get rolling. But that brings me to another point that I want to talk to you guys about, and it's the DJ Moore kind of walking out of bounds, walking to the bench at that one play, and it brings me back to what I was mentioning earlier, and it was Caleb running out of the pocket, and he was looking down, and DJ Moore was in the play, but he ended up walking again. He kind of I don't know exactly why that happened. He kind of walked out of bounds. They I believe is people were saying it was an injury that he immediately knew. He went to the bench to get that checked out, and also the fact that he was out of bounds means he can't go inbounds and be an eligible receiver. So there's kind of no point for him to do that. But regardless, it's concerning because DJ Moore's kind of had those issues this season in regards to his character. And not all of, I mean, most of it was not, it was over exaggerated and he was, messing around or the media over took this way out of proportion and stuff like that. But I want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on that play where DJ Moore kind of went out of bounds and went to the bench? And is it concerning or is it just, something that it was kind of a high IQ play in a sense for Moore? And I'll start with you, Eli. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is another one of those situations to where, for as much negativity as there has been with the Bears offense and with this Bears team in general. I think this is something that, it's new for Bears fans to be kind of upset about, and as you kind of mentioned, there's been priors with DJ Moore this season to where people have kind of been out for him and, the body language and stuff like that. I think this is another one of those things that's kind of overblown just simply because I think it was, you know, I got banged up on this play. I'm already at the sideline. I don't want to risk further injury. This play seems like maybe something could happen, but it seems like it's already dead at this point, and I don't want to risk, a penalty if something major happens to where we get a big gain and things like that. So I personally think it was just DJ being aware of the situation and not wanting to risk anything further. But I understand where some people may come from because, as I kind of mentioned, there's been priors with DJ Moore this season, and people just kind of like to add on with that, and it's a story, and people like to turn that into media. But Joe, I'll toss it to you if you had any other thoughts on the DJ Moore situation.
I mean, I'm gonna start out with I agree with you, but you kind of don't want to see a player do that. Like, I get it. Caleb was scrambling. You didn't think a play was gonna be made, and everyone was covered, and you went out of bounds. Um, now, I I I'm not 100% sure how the rule works, but I think you can reestablish yourself in bounds if I'm not wrong. Thought that's how the rule works. I might be wrong on that, but I swear that's how that works. So if that's the case, you just don't him taking himself out of the play at that point isn't like the best thing because he could have definitely helped Caleb. Um, and the thing is, he didn't even wasn't even out the whole time. He was he came back on that same drive. He just went to the bench on that play. So like I'd be more okay with it, I think, if he would. And this sucks to say because when it's obviously a player get hurt, but if he was actually hurt and out for that drive or out for the rest of the game, so be it. I would have been more okay with that. But like the fact that he went over to the bench and didn't come, didn't try to even attempt to get back on the field and was kind of laying on the bench over there, it doesn't sit right with me. Now, I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone else is making it. I think it's fine. I think for what it was bad, a bad look, but I don't think it makes DJ any less of a good player. Um, but with this DJ, with the DJ thing, I want to point out, and it's been pointed out a lot, but for some reason, him and Caleb still aren't on the same page, and they weren't apparently on the same page in like training camp and stuff. So that's not a good sign. Like I give him, I mean, we've given him 8 games, so I feel like that's enough time. When do you guys think you should hit the panic button on these two guys' relationship? Because last year Caleb was back, or sorry, last year DJ was backing Justin Fields till the end, and I'll give him credit. He did at Caleb right when they drafted him, but maybe he did want to keep Justin. So, what do you? How much longer are you guys giving their relationship to gel? Especially because they're both here for a pretty long time. So if they don't get this right, then it's not looking good for the Bears at all.
So I'll start. I think, you know, it's tough to make the comparison between the relationship that DJ had with Justin because Justin was in year 3. And, for as many flaws as he had, I will say that Justin Fields' deep ball was one of his better strengths. Um, and that's kind of at least for last year, this Bears offense, that was DJ Moore's specialty was that deep ball connection with Justin Fields. So, me personally, and I can see where other people come from with hitting the panic button, but I am more than okay with giving them the whole year to kind of figure this out. And the next year, if we're still having this conversation and it looks bad in training camp, then I think that's when you can kind of hit the panic button because, you look at the relationship, albeit, they've still struggled at times, but Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams have been, I would say, the best connection for this team this year, aside from Cole Kmet, who, that's something we haven't mentioned, had 0 targets yesterday. which is, again, is puzzling in itself. But I don't think it's necessarily just, I don't know how to pinpoint what the problem is between these two, whether it's just Caleb hasn't adjusted to the routes and the style of play that DJ Moore presents. And, him and Rome are rookies and they're both kind of figuring out together whether that plays a factor in it or not. But personally, I would give it the rest of the year to kind of see if, we get another game to where uh, DJ and Caleb connect. Because I think it was Carolina where they had that beautiful ball into the end zone in the middle of the field, where they kind of connected. And then he's had success with Keenan Allen as well in that Jaguars game. So I think it just take it in a week by week basis personally. But Isaac, I'll ask you what Joe asked me. How soon do you feel that we need to panic when it comes to the DJ Moore and Caleb Williams connection?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should panic necessarily right now. Like I agree with you, Eli. I think I would give them, at least this whole season, maybe next season as well, because like Joe mentioned, they're both going to be here for a long time, and sometimes relationships don't really start off on a good note right away. And it did last season with Justin Fields, but like you mentioned, Eli, Fields was in his third year. One of his better strengths was the deep ball, and that's what Moore likes to do. So it's gonna take time with DJ Moore and Caleb Williams, but I also do think personally, I feel like DJ Moore misses Justin Fields. Like I think he really enjoyed playing with him. They probably got really close in the locker room or just outside of football, and it seemed like Justin Fields really played to a lot of DJ Moore's strengths, and he's probably noticed this season with Caleb Williams that hasn't been the same necessarily. So I would give it time, and I do hope that this stuff going on with DJ Moore, because most of it has just been blown out of proportion, but I hope that it doesn't one day turn into something where it's actually concerning and we're like, whoa, like this isn't just something that we're kind of guessing on. Like this is actually, DJ shouldn't have done this, or why did he, something like that. But yeah, I mean, I would give it some time, definitely, because at the end of the day, Caleb's a rookie, and DJ Moore, as much as we would want to get him involved, it sometimes it just takes some time. So I'll pass it back to you, Eli.
Yeah, so I again, I agree. I think this whole offense right now just needs to find some level of cohesion and figure out what works right now with the personnel they have and with the injuries that they've suffered. Uh, but overall, yeah, I don't think, at least for that relationship, I don't think it's time to hit panic quite yet. But we've kind of talked about individual players and everything like this, but we can kind of transition to the organizational structure right now, I think, unless you guys have anything else to add. So let's kind of get into it. We've talked about, potential head coaching changes, changing the offensive coordinator, the players buying in and everything like that. So I think we can all agree right now. I think this is a safe bet that we want Eberflus fired at the end of the year. We can all agree on that. Joe, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I know uh there's well, portion of the media and portion of some fans are still giving Boost the benefit of the doubt, and I think the media kind of like the media's turning, but I think as a media member, you kind of got to give them the benefit of the doubt because you're covering the team. You want to hope it works out. Um, but I think all of us and most fans are done with Flus. Um, I don't see any way that I mean, okay, that's a lie. I can see a way that to keep his job. I don't think it's likely. I like if they somehow beat the division, like somehow go like 3-3 in the division and make the playoffs. He keeps his job, but I don't think that's gonna happen. With the way the team has looked the past 2 weeks, so I think he's out of a job by the end of the year. Um, so yeah, I had to add that.
Yeah, so we're all on the same page that we think Flus is, his seat is red hot and he's on fire right now, and he's on the verge of, and you could argue that he already has lost the locker room, but you're not in there, so you don't necessarily know, but you can kind of tell from the way this team played on Sunday. and kind of just everything that's been thrown out there with players talking about coaches and play calling duties and stuff like that. But is it tough right now to see, for example, the conversation has been around firing coaches. It's like, okay, well, if we were to fire Matt Eberflus right now, who would take over? And some people have pointed to, Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, that he would take over. Some people pointed out Waldron, which I don't think they would do personally, but um, that's been the conversation. It's like, okay, well, if you fire him mid-season, who takes over? And then that's a whole discussion in itself. And then it's like, if you fire him at the end of the year, do you trust? And I'll ask you guys this question: do you trust this Bears organization to have the accountability to make the right decision? And it's pivotal to get this next head coaching hire right, because we've been on this carousel of, and Isaac, we talked a bit about it before. John Fox had Mitch Trubisky. He was fired. Mitch Trubisky got thrown into Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy, believe reports came out, he never wasn't a fan of Mitch, and that turned into the Mitch and Nick Foles debacle and Andy Dalton and everything like that. But then that transitioned to Matt Nagy being fired, and Justin Fields, his first year was with Matt Nagy, and then he turned into Matt Eberflus. So we've gone round and round with this coaching hire of QB and head coach pairings. So, Joe, I'll ask you first: if we were to fire Matt Eberflus, do you believe that the Bears can make the right decision? And do you believe that there's anything that's holding this organization accountable to kind of make the right decision?
Okay. So I want to start with this. They hired Kevin Warren, who's supposed to be the change. Ryan Poles has done, for whatever you want to blame him for, the offensive defensive line. Other than that, he's done a pretty good job at building this team. And maybe he hasn't held Flus. We don't know. Maybe he hasn't held Flus accountable, or he hasn't held Flus as accountable as fans want him to. But I still have a bit, still have trust in Ryan Poles. So I think if they fire Flus, they do hire somebody that is better. Again, that might be just my optimism talking, because the history of the Bears tells you not, and George McCaskey is still the owner. So like that definitely still plays a role into this. You can have the right GM and right uh uh president. Is that what Kevin Warren is?
Yeah,
You can have the right
president,
those two
CEO kind of thing.
yeah, you could have those two people right. But uh if your owner is still cheap, then you ain't gonna get the coach you want, or the coach the fans want you to get. So I can see him still messing up and hiring somebody that shouldn't be hired, or might have had a good year, but shouldn't. Like, I can see them hiring Kingsbury, who is probably going to end up having a really good year as OC in Washington, but he has been a bad head coach in the NFL before. I don't know if I trust him to be any different as a head coach. I mean, there's some coaches that are just better offensive coordinators than they are head coaches, or defensive coordinators than they are head coaches. Um, and you can, I guess, say that about Flus. Um, but I know we're kind of deep into this now, but I do want to mention the stat that was brought up. Eberflus, uh, throughout his head coaching and um defensive coordinating career, he's given away 24 leads in the fourth quarter. So it ain't just a thing this year with the Bears or last year. It's been a thing throughout his career. So that's another reason why the Bears should move on. Is as the fact that he's never going to bring us to a Super Bowl. Just won't happen. I don't even know if he'll win a playoff game. Um, but I don't know if I trust. Or sorry, I just said I don't know if I trust. I was saying that I trust. I kind of I'm hoping, I'm my optimism talking, that I do trust uh Ryan Poles to make the right coaching hire. But I can also see a world where they hire the wrong offensive minded head coach, or they hire another defensive minded head coach, which none of us want. I don't think anybody wants. I think everybody wants them to hire an offensive guy if they fire Flus, which is what they should do. Um, but yeah, I have an optimistic uh trusting in Ryan Poles. Now that all that's gone if he messes up this obviously this year, and if they fire Flus, he hires another coach that no one wants. I'm then out on Poles completely. But I would hope that Poles hires a offensive minded head coach and then actually drafts some good play, like go offensive and defensive linemen this year in the draft, because that's really all that they need to do. Uh, like all they need to add on this roster is defense and offensive linemen. Because even if Keenan doesn't stay, I'm gonna hope that Tyler Scott uh this year learn from Keenan and learn from DJ on the bench. I know he's been fully absent, but hopefully he can turn into a wide receiver 3. If not, maybe the Bears take a wide receiver or late, or they sign one in free agency, and then that's probably a fourth. But yeah, I do trust right now Ryan Poles to make the right hire. What about you, Isaac?
Yeah, and to answer your question, Eli, about whether I trust the ownership, I could, I believe that us three at least, we have a better sense of Ryan Poles being able to get the job done the right way. Although, he did mess up on hiring Matt Eberflus, and then he hasn't really constructed a good offensive line. I still have some trust in him. The thing that concerns me is the ownership, like you mentioned, the McCaskey family. I'm sure they're good people, but they're really cheap when it comes to hiring coaches. That's why they don't fire anyone midseason. And then there was the report that Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, he was kind of eyeing the Bears head coaching position. And he kind of had those meetings with the Washington Commanders and then kind of backed off. And he was basically saying, I'm waiting for the right head coaching spot to open up. And by the reports, it seems like the Bears was going to be the right place for him, but he wants around 15 plus million yearly salary, and the Bears were like, no way that we're gonna pay this. And I just don't get it, because instead of paying just a little bit more money for a really good head coach, the Bears ownership is just trying to bank it on a lower profile coach. Okay, maybe this guy can do it. This guy was a defensive coordinator. Maybe he can turn into a really good head coach and hire a good offensive coordinator. That hasn't happened. Let's hire this offensive minded, offensive coordinator from the Kansas City Chiefs that, they've had a lot of success, and that didn't happen either in Chicago. So, I don't have a lot of trust in the ownership to do the right thing at this point. Um, I do have some trust in Ryan Poles to make the right hire. However, he was the one that ended up choosing Eberflus. I don't know how much of that was his own decision, because Eli mentioned it earlier, or when we were talking one day, that um, they were basically giving Ryan Poles like a list of a couple candidates. Okay, let's have you choose from here. Which is why when they announced the hiring of Matt Eberflus, I was kind of taken aback, and I honestly didn't really know who Eberflus was that much at that point. So it was kind of confusing for me, but like I said, I don't know if I have enough trust in the Bears ownership to do the right thing. It seems like they're content with just doing the same thing that we've been doing for the past decade, where it's okay, we draft a rookie quarterback, we'll keep a lame duck head coach for a year, realize that he's not it, we'll fire him, and we'll see if we're able to develop the quarterback that we drafted, and if not, we'll just restart and then do the same thing all over again. So, hopefully that changes. I do want it to change. I feel like after doing this same cycle for a couple of couple times, that they get the hint, okay, this isn't the way to build this team. Let's do it the right way. Let's get the right head coach. It doesn't matter how much they want. Let's just make sure that we get the right head coach and then go from there. But what about you, Eli? What are your thoughts on this?
So no, go ahead, Joe. Did you have something real
Sorry.
quick?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to pick at one thing that Isaac said, because I don't know if he meant it like this, but you don't 100% know that Ben Johnson's going to be a good head coach. He's a great play caller, could not be a good head coach. but you don't know that until you hire him. The only reason I'm saying that is because I think Isaac said that the Ben Johnson's a good head coach, and we don't know that yet because he has obviously not a head coach. Everyone thinks he'll be a great head coach because he's a great play caller, but that doesn't always correlate. We saw that with Matt Nagy, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Eli.
No,
Yeah,
and,
so I
and
kind of
then
want to. No, go ahead,
sorry,
Isaac.
I was gonna chime in. You know, you're right, Joe. I didn't mean to say that Ben Johnson was a good head coach because he's never been a head coach, but you know, at this point, it's like we're trying to figure out the right guy, and it seems like right now all the signs are pointing towards Ben Johnson becoming a good head coach, but we don't know. At the end of the day, we don't know, and hope. I mean, I just hope that we get the right head coach. It might not be Ben Johnson, it might be someone else, might be Bobby Slowick or whatever. But you know, we'll see. And toss it back to you, Eli.
Yeah, so I think you guys are right on the same page. I think Ben Johnson right now is the consensus no-brainer replacement, for any team that wants to hire their next head coach right now. And I agree. You don't necessarily know if he has the leadership qualities to be a head coach and if he, has the right decision-making process to hire the right coordinators, and everything having to do with the head coaching position. But I think it would be best practice to hire someone that you have seen on paper run an offense at a high level consistently for the last 2 to 3 years in Detroit. And you could also kind of make that argument for Shane Waldron. You saw flashes of it in Seattle, but I don't think near to the same degree that we've seen with Ben Johnson. So I think you never want to gamble when it comes to picking a head coach, but I think most people would probably laugh at Chicago if Ben Johnson wasn't the next pick. But that brings me to my next point. I want you both to guess, and if you already know the answer, then that's fine too. But I want you to guess how much the Bears are paying Matt Eberflus right now to be head coach without Googling it. Isaac, I'll start with you. Do you have a guess?
You know, I actually don't know that, and it's funny because I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna look it up how much he's getting paid, but I never did. You know, knowing the Bears ownership, it's probably not a lot. It's probably like maybe 6 million a year. Would be my guess. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not gonna give one number. I'm gonna give a range. I was gonna say 3 to 7. I'll go 4 to 7 because I think 3 to 7 is too big of a range. I felt like it's at. I feel like it's 3, but I'm gonna go 4 to 7. 4 to 7 because you were at 6, and I think it's somewhere there. I don't think the Bears are gonna go much higher than 7.
So you guys were right there, kind of in that range. The Bears pay Matt Eberflus $4.5 million per year to be the head coach, and I want you to think about how much Jim Harbaugh was paid by the Chargers to be their head coach. He gets paid uh, $16 million per year to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, $16 million per year. So looking at those, there's a small number and there's a really big number. And Jim Harbaugh, aside from Ben Johnson this past hiring cycle, was the consensus top candidate to be a head coach of an NFL franchise. So that is where the Bears are going to have to be in that ballpark, anywhere from 16 to $20 million per year to hire Ben Johnson as their next head coach. And again, we've kind of talked about it. History has dictated for the Bears that has not been the case. And whether or not it boils down to, and this is the case for many franchises, not only in the NFL, but especially the MLB. I'll use an example. Jerry Reinsdorf for the White Sox. That dude is notoriously cheap. All he cares about is selling tickets and using the White Sox as a business. He doesn't care about the success of the team. I'm not a huge baseball guy, but this past season, the White Sox were they were the worst team in baseball. And that's frankly
Baseball
because,
history.
exactly, yeah, the worst record in MLB history. And, Reinsdorf didn't really care because he was still making money. It's a business to him. So it's going to boil down to if the McCaskey family, and they're nowhere near as valuable as the Reinsdorf family, but it's going to boil down to, do they value the business that the Chicago Bears franchise is, or do they value putting out a winning product for their fan base. And that's the conversation there. So Joe, go ahead.
I'll I'll do I want to do one more analogy or uh comparing. So it's a little different with the Cubs. I mean, they were terrible for 108 years, but in 2016 when they won, uh, actually Madden was there. Yeah, I think what they did was they uh fired their coach or their manager the year before. He wasn't bad, but Joe Madden was out there and he was better. He gave the Cubs a better chance to win the World Series, which they ended up going to do. And I think last year, no one was saying Flus was bad because we were giving him the benefit of the doubt that we were rebuilding. But there was better options out there that the Bears could have went and got, and they didn't. Now we have a little bit more behind us, and we still have, 9 games left, but it's pointing to Flus just being downright a bad head coach. If the Bears don't make the right decision, like in fire Flus, then that doesn't only reflect bad on George McCaskey, but that will reflect bad on Ryan Poles. Now, again, we talked about this. We all think they're going to make the correct decision and fire Flus, but who knows if that's actually going to happen. But yeah, I wanted to bring up the Cubs thing because that's also pertinent because the Cubs finally won a World Series when they went and got somebody who they knew could bring them there.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect analogy. I don't, you know, it's tough to compare the MLB to the NFL just because of the time that the MLB is around compared to the NFL, but there are similar circumstances. And, coincidentally in the same city, Chicago, the Cubs historically just were a bad franchise. And then they made the right decision, as you mentioned, Joe, to put their franchise in the position to win a world championship. And they ended up doing that because they went out there and got the right candidate to be the manager of their team. And again, that's something that the Bears really need to consider this offseason, because this has been arguably the best franchise quarterback that you've drafted, at least, potential wise. And I don't think if you mess this up, how many years is it going to be before you get a shot to have a talent of his caliber come your way and fall into your lap, basically? Because how often do you not only get the first overall pick, but then trade out of it to the team that ends up being the first overall pick, and you get to draft a franchise quarterback where, in most instances, you wouldn't have the talent around him. It hasn't panned out this season the way we thought it would, but we're still in the position to where we're not completely sunk. We still have the opportunity. Our window's still there. It's just a matter of a few decisions here and there to kind of make this franchise be what we think it can be. It's just a matter of, does this franchise value winning more than it does money, so to speak? I think that's pretty well the comparison there. That's the choice that the Bears have to make. But yeah, overall, that's where we're at with the Chicago Bears. Do you guys have any thoughts when it comes to this franchise in general? Any steps that we can make to make this a successful franchise, or any thoughts on this Arizona game?
I just want to add one thing. I think next season is going to be probably the most important season in Bears history because, like you mentioned, like I feel like we finally have that franchise quarterback, that has the potential to be that franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams. And if the right steps are not made over this offseason, if we don't find the right head coach, if Ryan Poles continues to neglect drafting in the trenches, if the ownership doesn't realize that, maybe we should actually care about winning, then I don't know what's going to happen for the future of this team because I don't want to end up having to go into another rebuild. I feel like we have a lot of the right pieces on offense and on defense. We have guys that really care about winning. We have veterans, rookies, mix of everything. It's a good balance, but it's just if we don't get this stuff right, I don't know when it's gonna happen, and it's unfortunate, but I did have to kind of backtrack and tell myself that, the Bears, I had high expectations for them. I thought they were going to be 10-7, make the playoffs, but the reality is that, with the rookie quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, we were going to have our struggles. I didn't think it was going to be to this extent, but we are in a time where the NFC North is filled with really ultra competitive teams that I mean, the Packers are continuing to just be dominant, um, or not necessarily dominant, but continuing to be a good football team. The Vikings have surprised us this season, and the Lions look like they're gonna make the Super Bowl, which I hate to say. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth because we have been just owning them the past couple of seasons, but as a Bears fan, I just really hope that we could finally get it right and we could finally, be a team that is not laughing stock. Like I want to be able to wear my Bears gear to like the gym and not, have people look at me and be like, "Oh, this guy's a Bears fan." Like I feel bad for him, Like I want to be proud to be a Bears fan, and I'm just, I've been waiting for it feels like forever, but hopefully, it comes to fruition soon. But those are just my closing thoughts on this.
Yeah, so you know, from an outsider's perspective, you look at this Bears team, and on the outside, you look at the record and you say, "Oh, I mean, they're 4-4. They're at 500. What's all this talk of doom and impending firings and stuff like that?" But when you're a fan of the team, for as long as all of us have been, you kind of know just from looking at how these games have panned out, how this all works. And history has dictated that, we're not going to go on a 6-game winning streak and go into week 17 at whatever 10-6. That's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. So it's tough because you look at it on paper. They're 4-4. The season's not over yet, but everything that's happened these last 2 weeks have kind of snowballed into us feeling the way we do, and I think it's more than fair that we feel the way we do. But that being said, Bears are 4-4 after we fall to the Arizona Cardinals by a score of 9-29. We have the New England Patriots next week, and I can't imagine that we can get any lower. But if we were to lose this game, I think we fall through rock bottom. I think we rockier bottom. I think that's the way to put it. But Joe, do you have any final thoughts before we close it out here?
I was gonna say if we lose to the Patriots, blow everything up. Just I know you don't fire people in season, but if we lose to the Patriots, he deserves to be fired that day.
Yeah, I think if we lose to the Patriots, I think you're going to see torches and pitchforks on the streets of Chicago demanding change that day at that particular moment. But we'll try to remain somewhat optimistic. This is a more than winnable game for Chicago to maybe put themselves on somewhat of a track forward before we play Green Bay and head into the NFC North matchups that we were hoping to have been in a better position than we are right now headed into this stretch. But if we can get to 5-4 and somehow get back on the right track, that would be more than beneficial. But I think we're all kind of out on the Matt Eberflus Bears era, so to speak. So with that being said, this has been an episode of the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will preview the New England Patriots matchup on Friday, and hopefully we can improve to 5-4. Joe, any final thoughts?
Yeah, make sure to like, share, follow us follow all three of us on Twitter, follow our TikTok, subscribe to us on YouTube and like those shorts. But yeah, I just want to make sure we got that in there.
Absolutely. Keep track of us. It's tough sledding right now for the Chicago Bears, but stick with us because brighter days are maybe ahead, so to speak. We talked about it for a long time. We have the opportunity to make the grass greener on the other side. It's just a matter of if we'll plant the seeds and water the grass, so to speak. With that being said, this has been the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will see you next episode as we preview a matchup against the New England Patriots.